Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. Do you hear it? That silence that watches. It is not empty. It breathes. It waits. It waits in the shadows between ancient trees where the moonlight fears to touch, in the ruins where grief has long outlived the living, in crossroads abandoned by every soul brave enough to walk them. They are here, not gods, not demons, but something in between. Beings older than law, older than memory. 5 of them scattered across the world, yet bound by one purpose: to deliver what cannot be stopped. The Dullahan rides without a head, a horseman whose gaze sees through the body and into the soul. The Onryō drifts through walls, a spirit of wrath that chills the blood, born from betrayal and pain. The Preta wanders, forever hungry, devouring what it cannot satisfy, a shadow of unending desire. The Black Ankou carries the scythe of inevitability, guiding death where it is due. Patasola stalks the wilderness, a lone predator whose scream turns forests to silence. They are not stories for children. They are consequences made flesh, the echo of wrongs that cannot be undone, the shape of vengeance that waits patiently for those who have forgotten fear. We fear them not because they are random, but because they are inevitable. Their arrival is a verdict, their presence a warning. And tonight, we step into the spaces they haunt. Listen closely, for they are listening too. In the peat-scented darkness of the Irish countryside, where the wind moans over the bogs, they speak of the final ride. The Dullahan. He is a sovereign of endings, a headless horseman whose provenance is far older and more solemn than later tales of playful hauntings. His origin is intertwined with the ancient Celtic god Crom Dubh, a dark, demanding deity of harvest and sovereignty. The Dullahan is perhaps a diminished, fearful echo of that divine power, a spectral enforcer of the ultimate boundary, that between life and death. His habitat is the liminal space of the road itself, particularly the crossroads, a place of choices and convergences. He does not dwell, he transits. He is always in motion, riding a massive, silent black steed whose eyes glow with infernal light. The Dullahan's own form is a study in horrific absence. Where his head should be, he carries it under his arm or holds it aloft. That face is not a skull, but a lumpen, lifeless thing, the color and texture of moldering cheese, with a hideous, rictus grin and eyes that shift like black slugs. He sees with it, and its gaze can freeze blood at 100 paces. In his other hand, he holds a whip made from a human spine, its crack like the sound of a dying breath. His behavior is not one of malice, but of cold, bureaucratic finality. He is a herald, a courier of death. When he ceases his relentless ride and calls out a name, that soul is instantly and irrevocably severed from its body. There is no bargaining, no combat. It is a pronouncement. Encounters are rarely survived, but folklore is rich with desperate taboos to avoid his attention. Gold, the metal of the sun and permanence, is his only aversion. A thrown gold coin may cause him to vanish. To see him is terrible luck. To hear the grating shriek of the coist Badhar, the death coach he sometimes drives, is a death sentence for someone nearby. Symbolically, the Dullahan is the death that cannot be faced. He is the verdict without a trial. He represents the impersonal, unstoppable nature of fate, the moment when your name is called from the great ledger. The fear he inspired was not of a monster, but of an appointment. Rituals involved staying indoors after dark, bringing in all tools from the field, and above all, never, ever traveling on certain nights when the veil was thin. He shaped behavior by making the road itself, the connector of communities, a place of profound danger after sunset. He was the ancient terror of being known by something that wants only to end you. Across the world, in the quiet, paper-walled rooms of Japan, a different kind of boundary is enforced, not of life and death, but of justice and vengeance. Here, the Onryō is born. This is not a mere ghost, but a focused tempest of pure, unresolved emotion. Its origin is always a story of profound betrayal, injustice, or agony, often involving a woman or someone powerless in life. The myth is rooted in ancient Shinto and Buddhist beliefs about the pollution of kegir, spiritual uncleanness, and the potent energy of a soul-denied peaceful transition. The Onryō's primary habitat is the place of its trauma, or the spaces connected to its target, a lonely well, a specific room, a palace corridor. But its influence spreads like a stain, infesting homes, villages, and even natural landscapes with its psychic misery. Physically, it is a study in contradiction and unnerving detail. It often appears in the burial kimono, the katakabira, its feet vanishing into nothingness. Its face is corpse-white, framed by long, ragged black hair that seems to move in unfelt currents. But its eyes hold a void, or a seething, pinpoint hatred. It moves with a jerky, unnatural grace or a terrifying fast crawl, the tsuki, its body contorted with rage. Its behavior is purely punitive. The Onryō is a sentient curse. It is not interested in random hauntings. It pursues its specific tormentors with relentless, escalatory fury. It begins with signs, cold spots, the sound of weeping, possessions moving. It progresses to direct manifestation, then to physical assault, and finally to death. Its power is often tied to water, wells, and mirrors, and it can manipulate the environment, spreading illness, driving people mad, or summoning supernatural phenomena. The famous story of Akiku, counted eternally in a well, or Owa, her face deformed by poison, are templates of the Onryō's singular drive. The fear it inspired was a social and moral one. The Onryō is the ultimate consequence of wrongdoing. It is the fear that the victim you created in life will become your executioner in death. It represents the idea that emotional truth, grief, rage, betrayal, has a tangible, destructive power that can outlast the body. Reverence took the form of pacification. Elaborate rituals, kuyo memorial services, and sometimes the building of shrines were attempts to appease the spirit, to acknowledge its pain, and to convince it to cross over. The Onryō shaped a culture that deeply understood the danger of unresolved conflict and the sacred duty of proper mourning. It was a warning: do not create holes in the world where such vengeance can fester. If the Onryō is defined by a specific burning rage, the being known across the Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain traditions as the Preta is defined by a vast, endless, and universal lack. This is the hungry ghost. Its origin is karmic, a direct result of actions in a past life, greed, jealousy, deceit, or a failure of compassion. It is not punished by an external force. It is the punishment, a self-created prison of perpetual, insatiable want. The Preta exists in a shadow realm, the Pretaloka, a bleak desert-like dimension that overlaps our own, visible only to those with the sight of sorrow. They are drawn to places of human consumption and waste, gutters, latrines, trash heaps, and especially the sites of forgotten funeral rites. Their physical form is a masterpiece of torment. They are emaciated with distended, empty bellies and necks as thin as reeds. Their mouths are sometimes mere pinholes or burning furnaces. Their throats are blocked, or they consume only filth. Some are covered in oozing sores, others are perpetually on fire from within. They move with a slow, agonized shuffle, a constant, whimpering cry escaping their useless mouths. Their behavior is a constant, futile search for alleviation. They crave the most basic sustenance, food, water, but are cosmologically barred from receiving it. Offerings made by the living, if not properly dedicated through specific rituals, pass through them like ash. They are not hunters of the living, but wretched supplicants, shadows of envy clinging to the world of fullness. Encounters are tales of pity and horror. A Preta may haunt a family not to harm, but because it is drawn to the smell of food it can never eat, the sound of water it can never drink. Its touch is said to bring disease and misfortune, not from malice, but from its innate, corrosive aura of deprivation. The symbolic meaning of the Preta is profound. It is the embodiment of attachment, of desire itself, twisted into an instrument of eternal torture. It represents the psychological state of addiction, of bottomless envy, of a soul so consumed by what it lacks that it can perceive nothing else. The fear it inspired was a spiritual one, the terror of being reborn into a state of metaphysical poverty. Reverence took the form of the Preta puja, rituals specifically designed to feed and transfer merit to these lost souls, often performed during the lunar month of Bhadrapada. The Preta wasn't just a monster, it was a possible future self, a walking lesson in the perils of a life led by hunger without compassion. It forced the living to look into the gutter and see a reflection of their own potential fate. Returning to the Celtic fringe, to the windswept coasts and deep woods of Brittany and Cornwall, we meet another horseman of the threshold, the Black Ankou. He is often conflated with the Dullahan, but his nature is distinct. The Ankou is not merely a herald, he is the collector. He is the final laborer, the servant of death itself, or sometimes death personified in a more folkloric, approachable, yet no less terrifying form. His habitat is the same as the Dullahan's, the lonely road, the crossroads, the shore at the edge of the known world. But he is also intimately connected to churchyards, graveyards, and the Monster Ray, the wild, mystical hills of Brittany. His physical presence is that of a tall, gaunt old man, shrouded in a wide-brimmed hat and a black, tattered cloak that conceals his features. In some tales, his face is hidden in shadow. In others, it is a fleshless skull. He drives not a coach, but a creaking cart, the carriagel and Ankou, piled high with anonymous, shrouded bodies. The cart, axle, is said to scream the names of those who will die within the year. He is sometimes accompanied by two skeletal figures who help him load his grim cargo. His behavior is that of a systematic harvester. While the Dullahan calls a single name, the Ankou gathers in bulk. He does not kill, he collects the souls of those whose time has come. His approach is heralded by the sound of grinding wheels, the clatter of bone, and an unnatural chill. To see the Ankou or to hear his cart is an omen of impending death, not necessarily your own, but a death nearby. He is a figure of communal, rather than personal, fate. The fear he inspired was intertwined with the rhythms of rural life and the changing of the year, particularly around Halloween and the Feast of the Dead. He was the embodiment of the harvest of souls. Symbolically, the Ankou represents the necessity and mundanity of death. He is not a grand arbiter, but a weary worker performing an essential, eternal task. Rituals involved leaving the last sheaf of grain in the field for him, or leaving offerings at crossroads. He was a reminder that death is a communal event, a tax paid by all, collected by a familiar, if dreaded, neighbor. He took the vast, abstract terror of mortality and gave it a local face, a specific sound, and a cart that needed filling. He made death a part of the landscape's ecology. In the dense, breathing darkness of the Amazon and Andean cloud forests, a different kind of retribution waits. La Patasola, the one-footed woman. Her origin is a colonial-era fusion of indigenous animism and the brutal realities of conquest. She is often said to be the spirit of a betrayed indigenous woman, mutilated and left for dead, or a vengeful forest entity that predates human memory. She is nature's specific punishment for a specific sin, the violation of the wild, particularly through the betrayal of women or the cruel despoiling of the jungle. Her habitat is the heart of the most inaccessible wilderness, the deep ravines, the swollen riverbanks, the bamboo groves where light barely reaches. She is the genius loci of a vengeful, feminine wild. Her physical form is designed for both horror and stealth. She appears as a beautiful, alluring woman, often weeping or singing a sorrowful song to lure her prey, almost always men, especially hunters, loggers, or unfaithful husbands. But this beauty is a phantom lair. Her true form is monstrous. One leg ends in a sharpened, bloody stump or a hoof. Her breasts are long and twisted, and her mouth is filled with fangs. She can shift between these forms in an instant. Her behavior is predatory and symbolic. She uses pity and desire as bait. Once a man is isolated deep in her domain, she reveals herself. The encounter is swift and brutal. She does not just kill, she dismembers, echoing her own mutilation. She is a guardian of the forest's sanctity, punishing those who take from it without respect or who replicate the violence of her own story against women. Survivors' tales, rare and fraught with madness, speak of her unearthly screams, the smell of damp earth and blood, and the feeling of the very vines and roots conspiring against them. The fear she inspired was an environmental and social taboo. She was the reason a hunter would not enter a certain gully, why a man would not travel alone after dark, and why the forest was treated with a mixture of reverence and terror. She represents the wild's capacity for moral judgment and violent reclamation. She is the consequence of exploitation, the scream of the violated land and its people given form. Rituals involved leaving offerings of tobacco or aguardiente at the edge of the woods, and always speaking respectfully of the jungle's spirits. La Patasola is not a ghost of the dead, but the very alive, very angry soul of a wounded world. She ensures that the forest itself has teeth and a memory long enough to seek revenge. Now let the landscape speak. Let us wander these empty domains without a guide. Picture the rain-washed cobbles of a Breton lane at 3 a.m., glistening under a gas lamp's halo, the car struts from a heavier, unseen vehicle still fresh in the mud. Listen to the wind in the bamboo of a Colombian canyon, a sound that is not just wind, but a long, drawn-out sigh. Feel the oppressive, humid silence of a Japanese temple garden at noon, where even the cicadas have ceased their song, and the still air presses down like a weight. Smell the peat smoke of an Irish cottage, a desperate scent against the vast, star-choked blackness of the moor outside its thin walls. Stand on the shore where the sea meets the fog, and know that the line between water and sky, earth and air has dissolved. These are the stages for their dramas, not just places but moods given geography. A crossroads is not an intersection, it is a decision point for the soul. A deep forest is not a collection of trees, it is a living, watching entity. A forgotten well is not a hole in the ground, it is a tunnel to a colder, quieter world. In these pauses, in these empty frames, their presence is most felt. It is in the absence of life, the holding of a breath, the sense of being observed by the landscape itself. The fear they inspired was not just in their form, but in the realization that the world is not inert, it is participant. The dark is not passive, it waits, and in certain places, at certain times, it decides to collect what it is owed. What do these 5 sovereigns of the threshold tell us, when viewed not as isolated curiosities but as a pantheon of consequence? They reveal a universal human map of fear, drawn in the geography of the liminal. The Dullahan and the Black Ankou govern the ultimate transition, death itself, but as functionaries, one a herald, the other a laborer. They are the bureaucrats of the end, making the unimaginable processional, and therefore, in a strange way, comprehensible. The Onryō and La Patasola govern the transition of justice. They are the fail-safes of a moral universe, erupting when social or natural law has been catastrophically broken. One is the spirit of the wronged individual, its power focused like a laser. The other is the spirit of the wronged land, its vengeance ecological and primal. They are revenge, deified. And at the center, the Preta, governing the transition of desire. It is the consequence of a life lived inwardly, a soul that failed to transition beyond its own hunger. It is the warning of what happens when you become trapped in your own want. Together, they form a chillingly complete system. They patrol every dangerous border between life and death, between action and consequence, between need and satiation. They answer the terrifying question, what if the universe notices my transgression? With the Dullahan, the answer is you will be called. With the Onryō, you will be haunted. With the Preta, you will become your hunger. With the Ankou, you will be gathered. With La Patasola, you will be consumed by what you consumed. They are not random horrors. They are the dark, necessary engines of a universe that, our ancestors believed, kept accounts. In our modern world, sanitized and illuminated, we have not exorcised these beings, we have aestheticized them. The Onryō's jerky crawl and hair-covered face birthed an entire genre of J-horror, its visceral terror distilled into pixels and film grain. The Dullahan became a headless horseman of Halloween decor and fantasy adventure, his solemn duty often swapped for a more straightforward Gothic menace. The Preta's wrenching hunger appears in video games as an enemy type, a monster to be slain, its profound spiritual tragedy reduced to a health bar. Yet the fascination endures because the core fear remains. We no longer fear the forest spirit when we clear-cut a jungle, but we understand the metaphor of La Patasola in the guise of climate change, the violent, unpredictable retribution of a wounded natural world. We may not believe a wronged ghost will crawl from our television, but we understand the cultural power of the unresolved trauma, the story that demands to be told, which is the essence of the Onryō. These creatures have evolved from objects of propitiation to objects of analysis. We study them not to avoid their gaze, but to understand the gaze itself. We see in them the archetypes of our collective unconscious, the shadow, the anima, the concept of the karmic debt made flesh. The fear has become a fascination, a dark mirror in which we examine our own relationship with mortality, justice, desire, and the unknown. They are the original horror icons, and their power lies in the fact that they were never just monsters. They were laws. What then do these lonely sovereigns say about us? They say we are a species deeply afraid of chaos. We cannot bear the thought that a life can be taken without a caller, a betrayal occur without an avenger, a hunger exist without a lesson. So we invented them. We gave the void a job description. The Dullahan, the Ankou, the Onryō, the Preta, La Patasola, they are the sharp, dark edges of a framework we built to make the universe feel intentional, even in its cruelty. They represent our attempt to negotiate with the terrifying indifference of nature and fate. If death has a horseman, then death has a route, a method. It can perhaps be avoided if you know the rules. Don't travel on Samhain, leave a gold coin. If injustice creates a ghost, then injustice matters to the fabric of reality. If greed turns you into a hungry ghost, then your inner state has cosmic significance. These beings are the proof, written in horror, that we believe our actions mean something. That the universe is not just watching, but judging, tallying, and collecting. We still need them because we still face the same abysses. We have new names for the silence, the existential dread, the anxiety of meaninglessness, the terror of ecological collapse. But the shape of the fear is ancient. And in the oldest stories in these 5 forms, we find a strange comfort. In their monstrous certainty, they whisper a terrifying but reassuring lie, that you are not lost in the dark. You are merely waiting for your name to be called, for your account to be settled, for the forest to notice you. And in that, there is a perverse kind of order. So let the final image be one of quiet, not conclusion. The lantern at the crossroads gutters out, not with a bang, but a sigh. The last ember in the forest hearth turns to gray ash. The ripple from the single drop falling into the well's black water settles into a perfect, glassy calm. The wind in the bamboo dies down to nothing. They are not gone. They were never here to be banished. They are in the function of the place, not the form. The Dullahan is in the chill you feel when an old, forgotten fear suddenly resurfaces with perfect clarity. The Onryō is in the weight of a secret you can no longer carry. The Preta is in the hollow ache after a craving is satisfied, only to find a deeper hunger beneath. The Black Ankou is in the quiet, orderly closing of a chapter you never wanted to end. La Patasola is in the shiver of guilt when you walk through a place of ancient, unspoiled beauty, knowing what your kind has done to its siblings. Look to the margins of your world, the lonely stretch of road you drive a little faster down, the old house at the end of the street with one light always on, the corner of the forest that seems darker, denser, as if holding its breath. They are there, in the silence that is not empty, in the story that was softened but whose original, sharper version still cuts if you listen closely enough. They are the watchers at the threshold, the keepers of the ledger. The reasons we sometimes, for no reason we can name, turn and look behind us into the deepening dark, and see nothing, but know something. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.